Start in about a minute. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Dowling. I'm an alcoholic. It's great to be here tonight. Appreciate everybody venturing out in the cold. One more round of applause for Pat. Appreciate his words. Thanks, buddy. It's not easy getting up here and speaking and sharing, from the heart. And so, Pat, I appreciate you lying like that and avoiding it. Thank you. Appreciate it. It's good. Great job, brother. Great job. Before we begin, there's a couple things I want to talk about. Number one is at our last group conscience meeting, some of us took on responsibilities to review certain things in terms of the opening, to set up some appointments, to be on the IT committee, just some different things. And just want to remind you that we have another group conscience meeting coming up here at the end of March. And so if you need to get with your groups to continue to forward that and advance whatever responsibility you took, we'd really appreciate that. The second thing I want to do is I want to welcome the new people again. Who's here with a year or less? Anybody with a year or less? Welcome, you guys. Thanks for being here. Alcoholics Anonymous is, I heard it put years ago by an old guy in AA, and he said, here's what it's not. It's not the holy huddle for the frozen chosen, right? It's all about the shaky and the new. It's all about the new person. It's all about the guy or the gal sitting there whose life is falling apart around them and they're afraid to say that. And that could be someone who hasn't drank in 25 years, perhaps. Or it might be the person who hasn't drank in 25 minutes. But Alcoholics Anonymous is about that new person. That person who has yet to experience this entire psychic change that alters our lives. And I'm really, really grateful to be a part of a group that continually tries as best we can, however limited and however faultingly, to carry that message. Instead of a message of, here's the deal of AA, just don't drink, you should be fine. Come to meetings. Look, we're all going to hang out and laugh and have coffee and not change our lives, but at least we won't drink. And that might be fine for some, but that would have killed me, right? I had been running for a really long time, not only from the drink, but most importantly, I've been running from myself. And what I didn't know is that I was really truthfully running from God. And until I sat down and what Pat said and actually did the work, recovery didn't begin for me. I got sober when I was 24 years old, and there were a lot of periods of time in that I got goofy at 12, and I drank till I was 24. And so in that 12-year period, there were a lot of sections of my life where I had sobriety, sometimes months long. But why'd I go back? Because that's not what was wrong with me. Although on the outside, I had all the symptoms of what appears to be a drinking problem, I didn't have that. I had something very different. I had alcoholism. And although they sound the same, they're very, very different. So if you're new here tonight, and you're wondering, should I even be here? Do I even relate to these people? Why in the heck am I here? Right? Or I gotta be here. Somebody made me come. I don't know what you're thinking. Just know this, you're welcome here. Right? And we don't really care why you're here. We're just glad that you are. And if at some point along the road, you decide that you want to do this thing, not just hear about this thing, not just sit around in meetings and listen to this thing, but actually do this thing. I think there's some people in this group that can help you. And that's what we want. That's what we're here for. We're here to carry a message, right? So thank you for the new people who are here, and thank you for the other people who are here too. We welcome you, and we're glad you're with us. This chapter is really an odd chapter, sort of. I mean, at least on the outsource, right? I mean, you first look at it, you're going down the table of contents. That makes sense. That makes sense. What? Right? 2 wives? Are you kidding me? They've been the problem, right? Or at least that's what I thought. Not true, but that's one of the things I thought. And if you're here tonight and you're a female, I just want to say one thing. It could easily be written 2 husbands, right? It could easily be written 2 husbands. And so these principles that we talk about tonight are really going to be fundamental about relationship, loving relationship, committed marital relationship, and how alcoholism has impacted that. Now you might say, well, I'm not married, it doesn't matter. But if you've loved anyone, I'll bet you can take the principles and apply it. If you've been hurt by someone who's an alcoholic, I'll bet you can take the principles and apply it. If you're the parent or the child of an alcoholic, I'll bet you can take the principles and apply it. Right? Now, I won't know that if you don't try it. But if you try it, you can come back and let me know if they apply it or not. But this book is so relevant today, as much as it was relevant back in 1930s. This is an absolutely fundamental, important chapter to our lives, whether or not we're married, whether or not we're female. All right? So before we jump right in, I want to see if anybody needs big books. Randy's got a bunch over there. Chris is going to help him hand them out. Anybody who doesn't have a big book that needs one for a big book study? There's some over here. And as they're doing that, the chapter begins, chapter 8, which is on page 104. And we're going to bounce around a little bit. We're going to read some, then we're going to talk a little bit, then we're going to read some more, we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to try to dissect this chapter a little bit. Now, remember that the big book has 164 pages in the front half, right? This is approximately 18 pages. That's over 10% of the big book. There must be something they're trying to get across from us if 10% of the big book is devoted to these principles. This chapter was written by Bill Wilson, right? And it's interesting the way he lays out this. Now, there's a couple of ways and a couple of sets of glasses that you can put on as you go through this. The first is clearly, most specifically, to the wives of women, to wives who are married to alcoholic men. That's the most tight description. But you can widen that out to a spouse, as I said. You can widen that out as a parent. There's a lot of principles here. But as an alcoholic, we can also widen this out to see how our lives impacted the people we love. The devastation that it talks about, how the wives have endured these things, even if you don't have a wife sitting there, or even if you don't have a husband sitting there, how our selfishness has impacted another human being, how our demands for our way have hurt and damaged other people. We can put ourselves into that, right? So there's a couple of things I want to read, just to read the first couple of paragraphs here and talk a little bit about it, and then we'll move on. There's a couple of big sections in here that really, really matter to us. It says, with few exceptions, our book has thus far spoken of men, but what we have said applies quite as much to women. Our activities in behalf of women who drink are on the increase. There is every evidence that women regain their health as readily as men if they try our suggestions. So right there is the disclaimer that this is not only for men. Yes? Yes. Good. It says, for every man who drinks, others are involved. The wife who trembles in fear of the next debauch, the mother and father who see their son wasting away. Among us are wives, relatives, and friends whose problem has been solved, as well as some who have not yet found a happy solution. I like how they qualify the solution, a happy solution, right? So if sobriety was the claimed solution and there's no happiness attached to it, they're not talking about that. They're talking about something fundamentally different. We want the wives of Alcoholics Anonymous to address the wives of men who drink too much. What they say will apply to nearly everyone bound by ties of blood or affection to an alcoholic. There it is, pretty wide umbrella. As wives of Alcoholics Anonymous, we would like you to feel that we understand as perhaps few can. We want to analyze mistakes we have made. We want to leave you with the feeling that no situation is too difficult, no unhappiness too great to be overcome. We have traveled a rocky road. There is no mistake about that. We have had long rendezvous with hurt pride, frustration, self-pity, misunderstanding, and fear. These are not pleasant companions. We have been driven to maudlin sympathy, to bitter resentment. Some of us have veered from extreme to extreme, ever hoping that one day our loved ones would be themselves once more. Our loyalty and the desire that our husbands, fill in the blank, hold up their heads and be like other men, have begotten all sorts of predicaments. We have been unselfish and self-sacrificing. We have told innumerable lies to protect our pride and our husbands' reputations. We have prayed, we have begged, we have been patient. We have struck out viciously. We have run away. We have been hysterical. We have been terror-stricken. We have sought sympathy. We have had retaliatory love affairs with other men. How about this one? Our homes have been battlegrounds, as many an evening. In the morning, we have kissed and made up. Our friends have counseled, chucking the men, and we have done so with finality, only to be back in a little while, hoping, always hoping. Our men have sworn great solemn oaths that they were, through drinking, forever. We have believed them when no one else could or would. Then in days, weeks, or months, a fresh outburst. So if you sit here tonight and you wonder, do I even relate to this chapter? Like, why is this about me? I mean, I'm a 27-year-old drunk, or I'm a 58-year-old, whatever I am, wherever you fall on the spectrum of life. If you're in here tonight, I suspect that just these first 2 pages has touched some part of you. That's a guess, right? Either about what you inflicted upon another person with your alcoholism, intentionally or unintentionally, or the suffering that you received from someone you loved. I bet you we can find ourselves in here if we truly look. So it goes on. It keeps talking. It talks about financial insecurity on the next page, right? Bill collectors. As we zip through this, it says in the middle of page 106, it says, we have tried to hold the love of our children for their father. We have told small tots that father was sick, which was nearer to the truth than we realized. They struck the children, kicked out door panels, smashed treasured crockery, ripped the keys out of pianos. In the midst of such pandemonium, they may have rushed out, threatening to live with the other woman forever. In desperation, we have even gotten tight ourselves, the drunk to end all drunks. The unexpected result was that our husbands seemed to like it. Again, if you sit here tonight and you suffer from alcoholism, if you really have that disease versus a drinking problem, I don't know how your fights went or who you had them with or whether you had them. I can just tell you that as I read these pages, the details for me don't matter because I've never smashed treasured crockery in my house. So it doesn't apply? No. The venom that they're describing here does. The darkness that for some perverted, odd reason, when I felt it in my heart, I wanted others to feel it along with me, and even worse. When it made them feel worse, I felt better. How twisted is that? Only to come clean with some moment of reality and to feel the shame and the guilt and the fear and the remorse that always brought me, knowing that the only relief I had in sight was another drink, and that another drink would start the bout again, and that the bout would lead to the fight again, and that the fight would lead to the words that cut the people I love the most, only to wake up the next day feeling remorseful and guilty, knowing that the only help was a drink, knowing that that would trigger it again, knowing that tomorrow would be the same. And this was the habit trail I ran on. You know? I just ran and ran and ran in this. And what's crazy, if you ask the people that I loved, what is with that guy? They couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you. And truthfully, if you asked me, and people did ask me, people who loved me asked me, why are you doing this? I swear to God, I'd reach back in the folder of my memory and I'd pull up an answer and I'd open that folder. You know what would be in there? Nothing. I had no idea why I treated people who loved me in similar fashion, with at very least similar emotion. People who authentically cared about me, I treated like dirt. Why? I truly don't know. And they'd ask me and look me in the eyes, well, Mike, why are you doing this? And I would truthfully say, I don't know. And they would think I was being a smart aleck, or they would think I was being a punk, or they would think I was being arrogant about the whole thing, when the truth was that was the only answer that I had. There's a large portion of my drinking where I don't know was the only right answer I had. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And because of that shame and that guilt and that fear of hurting people that I loved, I tried to do what seemed natural to me, which was modify or control my drinking. Change where I drank. Not drink as much. Stay away from the hard stuff. Right? Make sure I left at 10 o'clock instead of midnight. Clearly, don't hang out with Scott, because those guys are the problems, right? Any first name with a double T, man, don't hang out with those people, right? I mean, I could come up with crazy ideas about how to modify, when to modify, right? Didn't matter. Didn't matter who I drank with or what I drank. It mattered that I drank. Because that always triggered this one commonality that if you authentically have the disease of alcoholism, you share with me. And it's in the first part of our book. Dr. Silkworth talks about it. It's this allergy. It's the common ailment we all have. And sometimes that gets really misunderstood. And how could it not get misunderstood? But technically, it's a very simple concept. It simply means this: when this body, when this physiology digests alcohol, something happens to it that doesn't happen to normal drinkers, to normal people. Why is that? I don't care. A lot of theories on it. Some are great. And if I know all the theories, you know what knowing all those theories doesn't change? The fact I have it. Right? Studying everything about cancer never helped my mother with stage 4 ovarian cancer. She still had it. Didn't matter. If she knew the causes and the probabilities of a woman her age and all the mastitizing that went on, it didn't matter if she knew all that. She still had it. The same thing with this. If I got it, I got it. Trust me, folks, I got it. Right? When this body digests alcohol, something happens that doesn't happen in normal temperate drinkers. And I don't know why, and frankly, I don't care why. When I treated people like that and the guilt, fear, shame, and remorse came, and I had 1 or 2, that always led to 3 or 4. And then it always led to 5 or 6 and 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. And that's my story. Over and over and over and over. Couldn't figure it out. Couldn't figure it out. So the book goes on. It talks about all these different kinds of things. On page 108, for the bottom second full paragraph, it says, there is an important exception to the foregoing. We realize some men are thoroughly bad-intentioned, that no amount of patience will make any difference. An alcoholic of this temperament may be quick to use this chapter as a club over your head. Don't let him get away with it. If you are positive he is one of the type, you may feel you had better leave. And it talks about leaving. It says especially when he has before him a way to stop drinking. And abuse, if he really wants to pay the price. That tells me something. It tells me that if I, as an alcoholic, want to recover for real, not just not drink, but I really want to recover for real, there's a price to pay. And all through the preceding 7 chapters, we know what that price is. It's your self-centeredness. It's my self-centeredness. Right? That's it. That's it. My own ego that says my ideas are right and my ideas are true and it doesn't matter. And who cares about all that stuff? It's me, it's me, it's me, it's my ideas. That's the kind of selfishness that must be slaughtered if we're going to recover from alcoholism. Why? Because of the other 2 parts of the disease. I have this physiology that's broken. I give you that. It's allergic. But honestly, I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong with my drinking at 16 years old. Many of you I've talked to over the years. And you've all said the same thing. Like, I knew something was wrong with me like way before I got here. Yep, I knew that. What? I wouldn't have put it in these terms, but at the time, I just didn't have the verbiage for it. But in hindsight, looking back, here's at least one of the things that was wrong with me. I feel like I was born with a low-grade hum always going on inside of me. Just this buzz, this restlessness, this irritability, this inability to just be. Have to fidget, have to crack a joke, have to have a smart aleck comment, right? Have to size people up, have to be cool, have to be tough, have to always be a smart aleck, have to be dry. I can't just be. I got to be something. I'm always performing to this buzz that can't settle down within me. That's a problem. My head would tell me stories and I would simply believe them. And when they were crazy stories and I would mess up, even when I was sober, the buzz would only get louder. I was loaded with fear. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I thought I was the only person on planet Earth that felt that way. I thought I was the only person on planet Earth that lacked the peace. I would look out at you and I would be like, you all know what you're doing. And then there's me. Not true. Felt true, not true. I thought every one of you knew what to do, and then there was me. My old sponsor, Keith, if you ever get a chance to listen to Keith L., do so. He's tremendous. Tons of tapes on him, or CDs on him. And Keith would say, my biggest problem was I was a man who guessed at life, and my biggest fear is that you would find out about it. See, for some reason, he told himself this lie that he was supposed to know how to live his life, that he was supposed to have his act together, and that every guy his age always had his act together. Many of the men I sponsor, when we walk through the inventory process, we talk about that. Well, let's say some fictional guy I sponsor, 37 years old, wife, 2 kids, house, mortgage, all the stuff that probably some general figure of a 37-year-old would have. He doesn't think that. You know what he thinks they have? They have 4 kids. Normal 37-year-olds have 4 kids. I have 2 kids. Right? You know how much he makes? He makes $57,000. You know what the average 37? $38,000. So he's ahead of that guy. None of that's true. We all walk around telling ourselves stories, yes or no, about where we fit in this hierarchy of life. Right? The average house has 3 garage stalls. I only have 2. Damn it. Right? Some people are thin, some people are fat. Most of you aren't blessed with as many chins as I have, right? We can all compare ourselves to things in so many different ways and feel insecure about the results that we come up with. And then we hide that. Yes? Sort of? A lot of head nods there. It's true. What if we were wrong? That ever occurred? Never occurred to me. Mike, all the self-assessment that leads to self-condemnation might be wrong. Never dawned on me. Not once. I'm walking around life with this head that lies to me, which creates anxiety and fear and remorse and guilt. I can't find peace, so I grab a drink, and then I act like this guy in the book. And then I wake up tomorrow with that guilt, fear, shame, and remorse about what this guy in the book did because he's me. I look around and that only exacerbates and widens that gap of what I think of me versus what everyone else is like and should be like. And I can't get any relief, so I grab a drink. Allergy kicks in. This is the story repeated over and over. I can't figure out what's wrong. And so I try to manage that too. So maybe we've gone to counselors, maybe we've gone to therapists, maybe we've gone to treatment centers, maybe we've gone to drug and alcohol counselors, maybe we've read a ton of books, maybe we've sent tens of thousands of dollars in treatment centers. God bless treatment centers, not mocking it, just saying. We have tried all kinds of things to turn the volume down in our head. Doesn't work. I'll tell you what works for me. The 2 to 3 beer buzz. right? Where the music in the bar is just the perfect volume and it's a great like 70s or 80s tune on there, man, and it's just kicking, right? The Bears are up by 14, well into the third quarter. Like, this is a good day, yes? If I could stay there, that would be fine. You'd have a different speaker tonight. Can't stay there. Never could. Never will be able to. Never will be able to. But it shows something that I tried, doesn't it? I'm not sure what, and I'm not taking any credit for that, but it shows something. And if indeed I'm powerless, something was moving in me to get me to help, the help I need. Way before I recognized that there was help out there, or way before I recognized I would do the work to get the help. Something was already knocking on my door to try to get my attention. Right? I believe that to be God today. I didn't believe it then, but I believe it now. Right? So as we bang in, we're going to talk about 4 categories of alcoholics. 1, it says your husband may be only a heavy drinker. His drinking may be constant, or it may be heavy only on certain occasions. Perhaps he spends too much money for liquor. It may be slowing him up mentally and physically, but he does not see it. Sometimes he is a source of embarrassment to you and his friends. He is positive he can handle his liquor, that it does him no harm, that drinking is necessary in his business. He would probably be insulted if he were called an alcoholic. The world is full of people like him. Some will moderate or stop, some will not. Of those who keep on, a good number will become true alcoholics after a while. Isn't it interesting? They don't just say alcoholic, they say true alcoholic. Like there's such thing as a false alcoholic, right? Well, there kind of is. It's called the heavy drinker, right? That person can look and do and behave almost identical to us. But when she says, I'm leaving, he quits. Or when the boss says, if you do this one more time, you've lost your job, and he quits. Or mom and dad say, if you do that one more time, you have to move out, and she quits. Or the college dean says, look, we've had it with you. This is it, and she quits. That's not me. I drink at those people, right? I turn up the volume with rage at those people, right? It's not me. So there is such a thing as a heavy drinker and a real alcoholic. They are not the same, although they may look the same. If you want more detail on that, I'd encourage you to read the doctor's opinion and a great chapter that speaks specifically to this called More About Alcoholism. The second one they talk about. Your husband is showing lack of control, for he is unable to stay on the water wagon even when he wants to. Even when he wants to. He often gets entirely out of hand when drinking. He admits this is true, but is positive that he will do better. He's illusioned, right? He's positive. He's positive that he'll do better. He has begun to try, with or without your cooperation, various means of moderating or staying dry. Maybe he is beginning to lose his friends. His business may suffer somewhat. He is worried at times and is becoming aware that he cannot drink like other people. He sometimes drinks in the morning and through the day also to hold his nervousness in check. He is remorseful after serious drinking bouts and tells you he wants to stop. But when he gets over the spree, he begins to think once more how he can drink moderately next time. We think this person is in danger. There are the earmarks of a real alcoholic. There it is again. Real alcoholic. Perhaps he can still tend to the business fairly well. He has by no means ruined everything. As we say among ourselves, he wants to stop. He wants to stop. Number 3. This husband has gone much further than husband number 2. Though once like number 2, he became worse. His friends have slipped away. His home is a near wreck, and he cannot hold a position. Maybe the doctor has been called in, and the weary round of sanitariums and hospitals has begun. He admits he cannot drink like other people, but does not see why. He clings to the notion that he will yet find a way to do so. He may have come to the point where he desperately wants to stop but cannot. His case presents additional questions which we shall try to answer for you. You can be quite hopeful of a situation like this. What? You can be hopeful of a situation like this? But it's interesting, right? That as they go through these 4 stages, the more brutal the person is, the more optimistic we are. If you hang around with step-working members of Alcoholics Anonymous who are trying to carry the message, you might hear this. New guy walks in and says, "Hey man, I got a job today." And we're like, "Good." A month later, "Hey, I got promoted today. Isn't that great?" And we're like, "Nah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure." "Hey, the wife let me back in. This is great." I don't know. Right? Got a new car. Right? Buy a house next month. We're like, whoa. Right? On the other hand, when there's a guy out there and he's suffering and he hasn't found us yet, and we're talking to their family members because we're trying to carry the message so we know the people who are involved with that person, and they say, "He lost his job." We're like, "Great, that's great news. I have had it with him. I'm ready to throw him out." Do it. We don't say do it. It's over dramatic, right? But the point is, right, when things are going well for us, in quotes, that distracts us from actually doing the work. Because why would I need to do the work now that I'm doing so well? Maybe you see my W-2s, right? Look at how cool I am. Do you know I just got married? I mean, I'm too busy. I'm so busy now. I got this family. I got stuff. It's not good. The work has to come first. And when the work comes first, the results come. And we find ourselves capable of handling that without losing the mission. Right? That's pretty beautiful. Right? But when we pick, it doesn't work out very well. Here's number 4. It says, "You may have a husband of whom you completely despair. He has been placed in one institution after another. He is violent or appears definitely insane when drunk. Sometimes he drinks on the way home from the hospital. Perhaps he has had delirium tremens. Doctors may shake their head and advise you to have him committed. Maybe you have already been obliged to put him away. This picture may not be as dark as it looks." Again, really? "Yes, you're going to lock him up. This will be great." Like, that's not what they mean. It's not what they mean. Many of our husbands were just as far gone, yet they got well. Let's now go back to husband number 1. Oddly enough, he is often difficult to deal with. He enjoys drinking. It stirs his imagination. His friends feel closer over a highball. Perhaps you enjoy drinking with him yourself when he doesn't go too far. You have passed happy evenings together, chatting and drinking before your fire. Perhaps you both like parties, which would be dull without liquor. We have enjoyed such evenings ourselves, had a good time. We know all about liquor as a social lubricant. Some, but not all of us, think it has its advantages when reasonably used. I happen to be one of those people. Been sober since August 27th of 1991. I can tell you I do not think that alcohol is the saliva of Satan. I just don't. It is used for extraordinarily positive and good things. This is my personal opinion. It is not in the big book. File this under jackass, whatever you want to do. I'm just telling you my opinion. I am not an anti-booze guy. Here's what I am. Spiritually sick, and if I drink it, it's messing me up. My sister goes out and has 2 beers, a glass of wine. She has a great time. Nothing wrong with that. Not wrong. Right? I go to a church. They use alcohol in their services to worship God. Alcohol serves many, many good purposes for those who can handle it. I happen to be an allergic type, and I cannot handle it. You know? I'm not anti-liquor, man. I'm pro-recovery from alcoholism. Very different positions. So the first principle of success is that you should never be angry. Even though your husband becomes unbearable and you have to leave him temporarily, you should, if you can, Go without rancor. Patience and good temper are most necessary. Our next thought is you should never tell him what he must do about his drinking. If he gets the idea that you're a nag or a killjoy, your chance of accomplishing anything useful may be zero. He will use that as an excuse to drink more. He will tell you he is misunderstood. Anyone feel that way? Can't believe you're complaining about me. If you'd only understand me. Nobody understands me, right? It was my battle cry, man. Nobody understands me. And then I met you, and you understood me so well, you scared the bejesus out of me, right? Or into me, either way, depending on your position. This may lead to lonely evenings for you, but you may seek someone else to console him, not always another man. Be determined that your husband's drinking is not going to spoil your relations with your children, your friends. They have a life too, right? So if we move on a little bit, it talks again, let's move down to the bottom of page 112, right? It says, suppose, however, your husband fits description in number 2. The same principles which apply to number 1 should be practiced. But after his next binge, ask him if he would really like to get over drinking for good. Do not ask that he do it for you or anyone else. Just would he like to. Right? Again, it gives some more directions, talks about showing him the book, talks about sort of enthusiastic cooperation, right? Would mean a great deal. Avoid urging him to follow our program. That's up to him. And if you notice, that's how we treat newcomers. We don't tell any newcomer what they have to do. AA meetings that carry a message tell newcomers what we did and how we felt and how we hurt so that they can connect to that if they're like us. And then we tell them what we've done. And hopefully, if they've connected to the problem, they'll do the work with us and connect with the solution. But we don't tell them what to do. We encourage them. We tell them what we did, right? Next paragraph down. And I'm skipping around a lot because we're getting close here. It says, if you have a number 3 husband, you may be in luck. Although it probably doesn't feel like it, which is what I think should be written next, you know. Be certain he wants to stop. You can go to him with this volume as joyfully as though you had struck oil. He may not share your enthusiasm, but he is practically sure to read the book, and he may go for our program at once. If he does not, you will probably not have long to wait. Again, you should not crowd him. Let him decide for himself. Cheerfully see him through more sprees. Talk about his condition or this book only when he raises the issue. Next paragraph. You would suppose that men in the 4th classification would be quite hopeless, but that is not so. Many of Alcoholics Anonymous were like that. Everybody had given up on them. Defeat seemed certain, yet often such men had spectacular and powerful recoveries. There are exceptions. Some men have been so impaired by alcohol that they cannot stop. Sometimes these are cases where alcoholism is complicated by other disorders. A good doctor or psychiatrist can tell you whether these complications are serious. In any event, try to have your husband read this book. You know, it's really interesting to me. We're on page 114, and so far I haven't heard one word of going to a meeting. I'm going to say that again. Thus far, 114 pages in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, written by alcoholics for alcoholics on how to recover from alcoholism. It doesn't say 90 meetings in 90 days. Although God bless 90 meetings in 90 days, a great deal. So far, it's done nothing but encourage us to take actions that most of us don't. So far, it's encouraged us to open ourselves up through the 12-step process to a God who loves us. So far, it's encouraged us to do things like take inventory, say prayers, share our brokenness with another person, make restitution for the wrongs we've done. Try to start as best we can or as trivially as we can some level of a prayer life. Try to carry that message in our experience to a person who still suffers, who's new. And it doesn't say you have to have 5 years to do that. It says do it right away. So far, the only solution that the Big Book has called us to are the 12 steps. And that's interesting because early days of Alcoholics Anonymous, outside of like the Akron area and the Cleveland area and the New York area where they had Oxford group meetings, there were no such thing as AA meetings. But when AA spun off and pulled away from Oxford and they had their own deal going, there weren't many of those either. They certainly weren't every night. These folks were sitting in coffee shops and sitting in their living rooms and sitting at their kitchen tables with a person who had worked the steps and a person who had not. And they're sitting there drinking coffee, talking about what to do, not how they felt. Only, not how they felt only. And recovery came in waves. Waves. And I'm a member of this home group, and I'm humbled and I'm honored to be a part of it. And I'm here every week when I'm in town. And I love being a part of it, and I love having you guys in my life. But you're not with me at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on some crazy moment I'm having in my head where my boss and my wife and my kids all seem like they're coming in on me in a way I can't manage. I need the program of Alcoholics Anonymous on that random Tuesday. Right? Or stuck on the interstate. Or coming home from a late night of work and I got a snow blow. Right? Everybody's had that one. Right? I don't know what noise goes through your head. But when you're not there, I need this. And you're mostly not there. Right? Because I don't live with you. That would be weird, wouldn't it? You know? Let's never go home. Let's just put bunks on that end of the gymnasium. We'll all stay here. We got a kitchen. What the heck? That would be weird, right? We're called to go live a life. Not just not drink. We're called to live a life. I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. Anyways, there's a lot in this, and I'm going to skip around a little bit till we get back to the end here. But it gives some advice on relationships, right? And it talks about specifically how to love a person who on the outside appears to be unlovable. And if that ain't spirituality, folks, I don't know what is. It tries to teach us methods and ideas and practices where we can forgive people who are unforgivable. And if that ain't spirituality, folks, I don't know what is. My wife and I have applied this part. It's on 118. And it's mostly because she's wrong about a lot of things. Anyways, just kidding. That was a joke. Is this on? Thanks for coming out tonight. I'll be here all week. I'll tip your waiters. Anyways, you and your husband will find you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. If anybody's had that experience, we certainly have. It says, next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege. How about that? Not the burden. It should be the privilege of either to smile and say, this is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later. If your husband is trying to live on a spiritual basis, he will also be doing everything in his power to avoid disagreement or contention. How about that? So as long as we know that, let's just go do it, right? Nope, lack the power. Right? How do I get the power to be this kind of person? The 12 steps give me that. How do I stay connected to be that person? I have to live right now in the moment with God to fill me. Most of the relationship problems that I have had, because I misdiagnosed the relationship, I thought I needed another person to have a relationship with. That's not true. I thought the best relationships I could have were people who were compatible with me. That's not true. Because you know what happens after 3 months? They change, right? And they're not the same person that I met 3 months ago, let alone 3 years ago, let alone 13 years ago, let alone 23 years ago. They changed. Compatibility is gone, right? And if they haven't changed, well, how sad that would be for their life. But I've changed. And maybe I'm going left and they're going right. Well, clearly it's bound to fail then. No, that's not what the point is. The point is to be filled in such a way by means of the 12 steps, by means of the God that we find through this process, to be filled in the moment so that when we're filled in the moment, I have what I need. And my job isn't to find out whether you can fulfill me. My job is to receive from him so that I have enough so I can give to you. See, I thought the right partner for me would be one that fulfilled me. Wrong. The right partner for me is the one that I can help fulfill. If the marriages that I've come to respect are sacrificial marriages. People who are willing to put themselves on the funeral pyre and be burned, metaphorically, right? Analogously, right? I don't mean it literally, for the other person. They're willing to give themselves up for the other person. And they find more wholeness and more fulfillment in doing that than if they had someone who constantly made them feel good. And I got to tell you, my wife and I try to do this, and we fail at it all the time, but we try to do it. And I got to tell you, she's a lot better at it than I am. She's way better at it than I am. I have learned more about God, and I have learned more about life from watching my wife try to love me than anything else I've ever seen. Where did she get that from? She got it from this book. She got it from the steps. She got it from a God that she found in these steps. And if you ask her, if you bump into her, you can ask her. She won't take credit for it. She points to the book. There's a couple things that are real important here, and we'll close up. On page 120, right? Actually, let's go back to page 19. We'll start at the bottom of page 19. Very last paragraph. It says, it's probably true that you and your husband have been living too much alone. For drinking many times isolates the wife of an alcoholic. And I'll throw in there us too, right? Therefore, you probably need fresh interests and, how about this? A great cause to live for. A great cause to live for. As much as your husband, that means us too. If you cooperate rather than complain, you will find that his excessive enthusiasm will tone down, meaning about helping other people. Both of you will awaken to a new and wonderful responsibility for others. You, as well as your husband, ought to think of what you can put into life instead of how much you can take out. Inevitably, your lives will be fuller for doing so. You will lose the old life to find one much better, And that's true. That's true if we do the work. Last paragraph says, we never try to arrange a man's life so as to shield him from temptation. The slightest disposition on your part to guide his appointments or affairs so he will not be tempted will be noticed. Make him feel absolutely free to come and go as he likes. Listen to this. This is important. If he gets drunk, don't blame yourself. How about this line? God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or he has not. A little gray in there? None. That's a black or white deal. If not, it better be found out right away. Then you and your husband can get right down to fundamentals. If a repetition is to be prevented, place the problem along with everything else in God's hands. That idea of if he gets drunk again, don't blame yourself. God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or he has not. That's a very powerful statement. It's a powerful statement because of the essence of step 12. The last 2 weeks, one of a big book study, Annie laid that out. And last week when Mallory was here, she laid that out. And both of those beautiful young ladies, those smart young ladies said this: I would be nothing but drunk without the promised spiritual awakening of working the first 11 steps. And they're right. I can tell you, I would be nothing without that. My sobriety is the smallest, although a fantastic one, and I don't mean to trivialize it in the least. It's one of the smallest blessings I've gotten in Alcoholics Anonymous, although a tremendous one. Although a tremendous one. Without that, I'd have nothing else past it. But AA is more